4 of 6 on Flynn. Jimmy falls to 1 and 4. Kev sleepwalks his way to a victory over Keith. Dan gets off the schneid. Gertie practically exterminates Jake's team. Chick and Billy both roll to 4 and 1. A lot to cover. Let's get to it. It's part of the Flynneruption. Okay, first off the board, Kev at Keith. Kev travels north to match up with Keith and Ari in Winterfell. He left the baby at home for this one, which isn't a total surprise because when you consider the way he treats his fantasy team, it's not shocking to think he'd leave the baby as well. Apparently, Kev can't be bothered to move players on his bye back to the bench. He has diapers to change and babies to feed. He left both Austin Hooper and Adrian Peterson in his lineup, though they were on bye. So, on paper, Keith gets a strong advantage going into this game. But Keith's guys didn't show up either, and he fell to Kev 73-71. This is a lot like when teams rest their starters in Week 17, but still win. You have one team who's giving about 78% effort, while the other team is giving about 100%, and then that team that's not even trying as hard still wins. Keith, I'm sorry, I know you know where I'm going with this, but the fact that I'm about to use an example of that happening to the Lions is simply a coincidence. In case you haven't picked up on it yet, back in 2011, the Packers decided that Aaron Rodgers would be better off on the sidelines blowing a kazoo.
Packers at 15-1. They have home field advantage locked up throughout the playoffs, so Aaron Rodgers just clowning around on the sidelines.
Then playing in a Week 17 game at home versus the Lions. Good part for the Lions is that they scored 41 points in that game. Bad news is that Matt Flynn went off and threw 6 touchdowns and beat the Lions 45-41. Keith, it hurts me to give you this one, but the Matt Flynn beaten by the backups award goes to Keith.
2nd and goal, a minute 13 left in the game. Flynn with a touchdown pass to Jermichael Finley, and with that, his 6th touchdown pass of the game. Matt Flynn became the franchise leader for most touchdown passes in a game for the Packers. More than Brett Favre, more than Aaron Rodgers. Packers get the win.
Flynn at Scott. A couple of Spillers clumsily fumbled their way through the lowest scoring match of the week in this one. Scott put up a modest 75 points, and I scored in the 50s for the 3rd time in 3 weeks. I was going to go on and on about the woes of my team, but I realized I actually did that too much last week. And Gertie, being the Thai law student that he is, astutely observed that I did a little too much defending myself last week, and I happened to overlook an important award. So, last week's and this week's John Riley's most likely to make an excuse award goes to me. So what that means is that Scott won the battle of the uncoordinated, which I'm not sure is something to be proud about. That's kind of like being the most athletic offensive lineman. You might get your one play of glory, but you still have to block in the other 80 snaps. Which brings me to my next award. The Dan Connolly Most Athletic Offensive Lineman Award goes to Scott.
17-7. Bouncing ball fielded to the 25.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, look at this. This is Dan Connolly, the right guard. The right guard. Still going to the 4-yard line.
And shout out to Keith for reminding me of John Madden's great line in The Replacements, which complements this award and this video perfectly.
I love to see a fat guy score. Why? Well, because when you get a fat guy fight, and then you get a fat guy dance.
Steve at Jimmy. County department versus engineering department. Calculators versus Legos. This was a big test for Steve. Before this matchup, he was 1-1 on the road. He's tended to struggle in away games this year and going back to previous years. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why he hasn't done as well when he's on the road. I like to speculate that he just doesn't feel as comfortable when he's outside his accounting desk. And I think the reason why is because he just doesn't feel as comfortable when he's not near that Bryant diploma. Don't believe me? Look who he drafted in the 10th round. The kicker. But not just any kicker. Matt Bryant. Surprised he didn't take Martavis Bryant as well. You know, whatever the reason is, it looks like he got over it in this one because he pulls out the win here. On the other hand, Jimmy struggled to draft and maintain a relevant team, and that's not just this year, that's past years as well. His current squad, Hilby Baldwin, he gets a BJ, has now slipped to 1-4, and despite a 20-plus point outing from AJ Green, he manages a piddling 53 points. You don't need an accountant like Steve to let you know that's not going to be enough to win. And on the other hand, you might need a calculator if you're going to try to track all the times that Jimmy's now quit football. He sent shockwaves through the fantasy football world when he threatened to quit managing his team early in the day on Sunday. This may not come as a major surprise to many of you, as this would not be the first time he's quit football. For those of you keeping score at home, this would bring his total tally to 3, once in high school, once at the collegiate level, and now potentially once in the fantasy ranks. This week's Brett Favre Make Up Your Fucking Mind award goes to Jimmy. Chick at Bose. First bowl game of the season, boys. I know sometimes these bowl games get a little overhyped, but when you have a tantalizing narrative like the one in this match, it's hard to not get sucked in. A rivalry born out of commonalities, these two both began preparing for their careers as fantasy football owners by getting to know the game at the collegiate level. Both Chick and Bose played linebacker for their respective Massachusetts institutions of higher learning, Western New England College and Worcester State University. Winner gets to enjoy some homoerotic towel whipping back in the locker room. Loser, a silent bus ride home. This one was hard to handicap. On one hand, you have to give the edge to Bose, who, unlike Chick, actually attended a university. Though it was renamed after he left, Chick simply attended a meager college. On the other hand, Chick demonstrated a statistical advantage. After reviewing the NCAA website, I found that Joe recorded a total of 67 career tackles, as opposed to Matt's 51. God, I wish I didn't just say that. I can already feel his ego inflating faster than his blow-up doll. Alright. I don't want to say this. It's embarrassing for Joe, but it's for everyone's own good. According to the NCAA, Chick had a single punt return for a total gain of -6 yards. How's that possible, dude? How many pre-meeting lines did your coach have to do to be high enough to send you out there? And then what happened? You looked up, saw the defense, ran straight backwards so you tripped? Either way, this one was poised to be great, so without any further delay, let's get to this week's bowl game. The Hooked on Phonics, Division III, We Used to Be Linebackers, Mass Turnpike Classic, still romanticizing the Glory Day Bowl, presented by Busch non-alcoholic beer. For when coach says you can't drink before the game, but you still need to taste that Busch. Please drink responsibly. You don't need a 4th grade reading level to figure out how this one ended. Chick rolled Bose on his way to an 81.8 point victory. Quite the margin of error, yet still not enough for this week's Michael Strahan Wide Gap Award. Who's it going to be? Staying with the sports you used to play theme, Bill hosted Mitch on his home field in a battle between the baseball catchers. If this was a session of pitchers and catchers, it was definitely Mitch who was bent over doing the catching, because this one got ugly quick. Though Mitch got ahead in the count early after an 8-point Thursday night lead from Brandon Cooks, Bill quickly powered back by pounding Mitch deep and inside. His unrelenting train of Gordon, Hunt, Bryan, and Adams combined for a bruising 69 points. At this point, the gaping hole that Bill had created was just getting deeper, and Mitch continued to feel the pain. It wasn't over though. Next on deck was Will Fuller, who went 2 for 2. He literally had 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. By now, the damage had been done. Mitch had one last chance to turn around and stick it to Bill. He sent the Vikings to the plate in the bottom of the 9th to try to overcome a 35-point deficit, but it wasn't enough to penetrate Bill's dominating lead. So, after putting the ass in massacre, Bill pulled out the win. The ironic part of the game, though, is that it was Bill's tight end, not Mitch's, that ended up being the most damaged. Unfortunately, it looks like Charles Clay will be facing a multi-week injury. On the other hand, Zach Ertz scored 12 points for Mitch. It looks like he may have the most resilient tight end after all. Only time will tell. Well, looks like we have back-to-back games on Jake's home turf, the Small Soldier Field. This one, a battle of cops and lawyers. A police officer versus a defense attorney. Except, in this analogy, the cop forgets to show up for work sometimes and barely even tries when he's there. While, on the other hand, the lawyer is an experienced professional and often leans on the wisdom of his elder counsel, Stewart, Gore, and Breeze. Gertie was poised to win this one from the beginning. It's almost as if Jake arrested a guy for assault, but the guy had no arms. Gertie didn't have to put in much work to take home the W. Now that's not to say Gertie didn't do well. He put up the third most points this week and blew Jake out by 81.9 points. That's 0.1 more points than Chick beat Bose. So Gertie, congrats. You're this week's Michael Strahan Wide Gap Award winner. I'm not done here though. Jake, if this week's attempt at fantasy victory is even close to the equivalent of your attempt at enforcing the law, then God help the community of New Haven. Jake, when you go to work, are there other guys at the station that say they play fantasy? Do you tell them that you play fantasy too? Yeah? Well, stop, because you don't. You have a fantasy team, but you neglect that team more than Scott's parents neglect mowing the lawn. Okay? A little less of this.
How about we pop a couple Viagra and issue tickets with raging mega huge boners?
And a little more of this.
Enhance. Enhance. Enhance.
And without further ado, this week's Brett Favre Award goes out to Jake. Coach Highland versus Coach Lee. One coaches football, another is a personal training coach. One is definitely more qualified than the other. While Dan is actually someone who knows a thing or two about personal training. On the other hand, Brendan is coaching varsity football, though he's never played varsity football. That's like going all 4 years of high school without ever taking a Spanish class, then showing up 6 years later and be like, hey, I'll teach Spanish, and they let you. How are you qualified for that? So it's no surprise that Dan got his victory in this competition between coaches. Gotta give it to Dan. He saw the opportunity and he took it. Brendan was coming off of a satisfying win last week over Keith. He saw Bose on the schedule for week 6, and he just got caught looking ahead. You know what they call that? Trap game. And you know what Dan's all about? The trap game. Should have seen it coming, Brendan. This week's Migos Trap Game Award goes out to who else? Diesel Dan. You know what they calling that? Eric Decker should have sat. Brendan losing, Diesel winning, 1-4, new beginnings.